Those guys setting that up, in my eyes, they couldn't tune a bloody banjo as far as I'm concerned. Welcome to my garage. A bit dark in here. The lighting's not, it's good enough to work in, but it's not great. So my garage is full of crap. Frustrates the hell out of me because I'm such a messy bugger, but there's all sorts of stuff in here that I get up to and just rubbish everywhere, but it's organised chaos. I know where everything is, more or less. So what we're going to do today is my pilot jet's turned up for my bike a couple of days ago, so I'm looking to rejet that and sort its issues out, stop it from oiling up the plug so much as it does and all that sort of jazz. But I might give you a little rundown on this bike. So far I've ridden it a couple of times. Despite having to change the plug a few times, it's not been too bad. It's got plenty of power, plenty of compression, plenty of it's quite nice to ride. It just, you can't rev it up too much because it just starts upsetting things. But a few little niggles. I stiffened up the rear shock a little bit, mainly because I don't know. I mean, the chap who had it before, they reckoned he was, sort of my size, but it was very soft on the back. So we stiffened up the rear shock. Did a little bit of work on the forks. They feel pretty good, to be honest, but there's no slack or play in them. The bushings feel fine, seals are great. I've got to change the oil. I'm just going to do that as a matter of course, but no, it feels pretty good on there. Wheels okay, it's got a few dinks in the rim. Needs wheel bearings, but it came with a full set of wheel bearings. That was part of the thing they were going to do before they sold it, but I got there before they advertised and they just hadn't done all that yet. Brakes are okay, need some pads. Headstock bearings are okay, but silly little things which all signs of a working machine really. Like the gear lever was loose and it was running loose, and so that sort of chewed the splines up on the output shaft a bit, which is rather irritating. So I took that off and sort of opened up the gap, if you like, with the grinder so that it can clamp down on there more. And it is holding, although when I took it out the other day it had loosened again, but I don't think I didn't want to risk tightening it up too much because it stripped the threads, but I've tightened it up again and it's biting down on that shaft pretty good now. Rear brake, I mean, obviously they take a serious bashing anyway, so the old foot thing there is a little bit smashed in or whatever, so we sort of shaped that back a bit, but it could do with being bigger really. Move the handlebars around for I'm like 6'3", so I just shove them forward a bit and just pick them up on a nut as a spacer for the time being. But on my old bike I made this huge big block of aluminium, which was a riser block for it, which was great. It felt really comfortable standing on the pegs and sort of trials riding around. It's good on my back, took the pressure off my arms a bit, but when you sat down on the bike trying to go through the turns, I'm not a very fast rider anyway. I'm not particularly great with hooking through rutted turns or anything, so I found with the bars being all the way up and high, they were a bit sort of way out there, a bit like riding a chopper instead of being on a motocross bike. So what I've done with this bike now is I'm keeping the handlebars pretty much in a relatively standard position. Yeah, I've turned them up a little bit and just given them a little bit of room, but I want them in a fairly standard position because I don't want to, as a rider, get too used to having something that's unusual. I'd like to be able to say jump on someone else's bike and still be able to ride it and it doesn't feel too alien to me. I've also done this with my old bike that Vicky now owns. I've put that back to pretty much standard. I don't want her learning a riding style that isn't correct to most bikes. So the tubeless in the rear tyre is letting air out. First of all, I realised it was actually the valve. So I changed the valve in there, and I think that's holding now. But I looked into the tubeless system, and they're kind of great and they're kind of not great. They if your tyre's not seating on the bead good, or it's got a nick or a breakage, you know, a lot of tyres when you're swapping and changing them around all the time, you just nick the rubber or expose the bead in there, and if you haven't got a good seal, then the tubeless system doesn't work. It just lets it air out. It still runs because that's what it does. It clamps it to the wheel rim, and you know, like a bead locker, and you can still run on a flat tyre, but then you're just running on a flat tyre. So they're not impervious to pinch flats apparently, but I've looked all around the tyre and I can't find any punctures, because I bought one of those quick sort of in the field puncture repair kits that they use, and expecting to just find a hole and plug it, and I can't find the hole, so I think it's in the rim. I'll stick it in a big bucket of water and see if I can find that. Other than that, it's just jetting. I just want to get to the bottom of the jetting. I mean, it's way too rich, as I've stated in some of the videos. It's just smoking its ass off, so you know, it's obviously too rich, which is kind of annoying, because I know the previous owner was frustrated with that. What they said is the bike's for sale, but they want to get the stator rewound because they believe that the ignition wasn't working properly. And I said to them, what seems to be the issue with that? And they said, well, it's okay when the bike's riding fast, but when they get in the tight areas, it's just oiling up really badly, and you know, the plug breaks down and then it fails. So at the moment you kind of get about, depending on how you're riding, about 20 minutes, half an hour before the plug fails. And they sort of bypassed the fueling aspect of it because it had been taken somewhere already to be set up, the fueling to be set up by somebody who does it professionally. And well, that's alright if you're beasting it around a motocross track and you're on the pipe all the time and the dyno set it up. Well, that's not a real life environment. If you were drag racing or something, like I used to do a lot of drag racing, and you were setting a bike up on the dyno to produce maximum power, or road racing, then great, you're on it all the time. But we're not. I don't even think the really good, you know, expert riders are on it all the time on an enduro. So setting something up on a dyno for enduro riding is ridiculous. It's got to be done in the field, if so to speak. So although I did get some main jets, and I'm happy with the top end, it don't take long before you can't even get up to the top end, because she's so oiled up and choked up that eventually you just can't get it up there without the plug failing. So I'm going to stick some pilot jets in there and see what reactions we get. See what happens. Huh. Well, in classic YouTube fashion, the old battery went flat on the GoPro, so I've just rigged up a charger on that and got a light on the subject here. But I've got the pilot jet out, so I did change the main jets when I first got it, because I knew that there was a problem. So I immediately got a set of main jets in, and I changed the main jet and dropped the needle right down, and it felt like an improvement for sure. So but then inevitably over time, when you're riding around slowly, it was giving me the issues still. So we got a set of pilot jets in. Now then, yeah, okay, they're cheap pilot jets, they're not genuine, they're, you know, from China or wherever. And yeah, okay, so you can't really trust that they're accurate for sizing and numbering, but we're just going to go by the numbers and see what happens. I'm not overly fussed about what the numbers say, as long as I can put a jet in there and it makes a difference, then great. So I've got the this pilot jet out that was in it already, and I think the standard is a 42. So I had a look at this and I was surprised to see that this is a 38, which was already that was what I was going to put in it, was a 38. So, you know, what kind of 38? Is it a dodgy 38? Is it a normal 38? Like I say, I'm not going to go by numbers. I mean, I'm looking down that hole there, I'm going to get a 38 now. To the naked eye, you're never going to be able to see the difference, but you don't know, do you? A tuning company gets their hands on a jet, and then they, you know, if they ain't got a 38 or a whatever size, you know, what's to say they haven't drilled it out? So, what's that say? 32? That's a 32. 50. 35. 45. 40. 52. 42. 55. 48. And the 38. So, let's have a look at the next size down. My God. So you look at the increments on these jets and they're very small. The holes are very tiny. Now, I've just looked down that 38, and the hole, I'm just going to sort of hazard a guess that it's like a mil big. And then you look at this one, the 48, and that's a load smaller than the one that's in there. I mean, it's not even close. So I would imagine that they've drilled that out big time. I'm wondering if I can't set the camera up and try and give you a size comparison. I'm going to do my best to try that in a minute. Alright, so the lighting's not great. I'm hoping I can sort of edit that out. So now we've got the jet now that is the one that was in it, and it's marked as a 38. And then you look down the hole, and you see the hole there. It's very small. Like you might get a needle that would pass through that, like a sewing needle or something like that, right? Now I'm going to take the 38 from the set, and I'll show you that hole now. Here's the 38 from the set. See the difference in that? I mean, it's a pinprick in comparison. Try and put them side by side. Got to keep them straight with each other. So there's the one on the left, is the 38 that came out of it, and then the one on the right is the 38 from the set. Quite a difference. Let's take the 42 that was the standard sets one for out of the set, which is a standard suggestion for that bike, that it comes with a 42. It's small as well. In fact, I bet if I take this 55 That's not even as big as it. Side by side now. 45 on the right, the 55 on the right, and the 38 that came out of it. So it's not even close, guys. It's obviously been drilled out. What I'm half tempted to do is, I mean it's just massive. If we take the smallest set, the smallest from the set and the biggest from the set, you'll see the differences that are being made between the hole sizes. It's quite negligible really. There's the biggest one on the right, and that's the smallest one on the left. So I mean the differences are very, very slight, and that's a full range of jets from 32 to 55. So what I'm half tempted to do now is I'm actually going to put a 40 in it from the set. I'm just going to go right middle of the road. So what size is this? That's the 42, which would theoretically be the standard size, and then this is the 40. So we're going to pop that in there. So what you can learn from that is that the numbers don't mean anything. You might get a bike, you might decide then that you're going to rejet it, and you have a look to see what jet's in there, and you think, oh, it's rich, it's got a 40 in it, I'm going to order myself a 38, because you can order them individually. And then when you get your 38, it's nothing, not even close to the 40 that was in it, or the 38 or the 42 that was in it, or whatever. You have to go and buy a set. And yeah, okay, so the numbering might not be accurate to the sizing because they're cheap, but if you get a full range, you can play around with them until you get something like it. So I'm going to put that 40 in, which is obviously considerably smaller than the one that was in it, which was a 38, but I believe it's been drilled. I'm going to pop that in there. I'm going to fire it up, and I'm expecting it to start revving up, and I've got to sort of work drastically to try and calm it down a bit, because there's such a difference between those pilots. Then there's going to be a hell of a difference. It might not even start, but we'll try it and see what happens. Okay, so just wheeled the bike outside, and I put a new plug in it. As just you do that because you want it to be able to, you want everything present and correct. Don't want an old plug in there that's a little bit fouled and is not doing the job properly. So new plug in there. I've also set my air fuel mixture back to like 1 turn out, which is pretty standard, 1 to 1.5 turns. Previously I'd had it out to like 4 turns because I was trying to get some sort of response on it while I was out riding. Because it was too rich, I was trying to lean it off as I was riding, and it just wasn't making any difference. So I knew that the pilot was, proper suspect anyway. So new plug, air mixture screws out to the turn, everything's ready to go. And a little task for you: between wheeling it out of the garage and onto the stand outside, there's something physically different about the bike. Let's see which one of you's keen-eyed enough to see the difference. It's a visual difference on the bike. So leave a comment below. Well, what can I say? So what's happened there is I've took a bit of a guess on the jet size, because with the old jet being so, I mean, I'm just going to call it mullered. I mean, all settings are lost with that. When somebody drills a jet out, it's just, you don't know what it is. They might have used a numbered bit, a drill bit, what they call a numbered or a lettered bit, which is a specific size to drill that out. They may have chose one in mind to do exactly that job for whatever reason, but we don't know how big it was. Again, the numbers are regardless. So I've just sort of hazarded a guess. I've took a jet which is kind of middle of the road. I've popped it in there. It's definitely leaner than the original jet, which is why it revved up like it did, and I was expecting that. Immediately went to the tick over. Now, up until now, the tick over has done nothing. You weren't able to adjust it. In fact, it was wound all the way in, and it used to tick over very low, which is a very rich scenario. So immediately we run to the bike, start winding out the tick over. It's settled down. So okay, the bike's not warmed up. Okay, I haven't ridden it up the road or out in the dirt, so I don't, it might be gutless, I don't know, but the fact of the matter is we had some definite changes there. It's still smoking pretty good, probably too much still, but it's definitely feels a lot more. When you adjust things, you saw I went and adjusted the air screw, and I just tweaked it here and there, and it was sort of moving around. Well, it wouldn't do that before. So what that tells me is that we're now in the fueling region where you can make adjustments and things can happen, and that to me is a good spot for the bike to be in. So I'm going to test ride that now when I get a chance, either out in the dirt or I might even just whiz it up the road here for a minute, and see what we think of it. If I'm happy with the bottom end, the fueling at the bottom end, I may now need to go and address the top end, the main jet, and the needle settings to try and get that mid to top end range, something like it. It was actually okay before, but I put such a small big main jet in it because the pilot jet was making up for what the main jet wasn't supplying, so it was already too rich. So what I might find now is that my main jet is too lean because the pilot jet's not supplying that extra fuel before it even gets onto the main jet. What I'd like to know is that I can bring my needle somewhere up to near the middle settings, and then I've got that playability, I've got range to play with, because at the moment the needle is shoved right down low. So I just test rode that up the road, which I don't normally do. I don't like doing that. Pulls great. I mean, first, second, third, you know, it's just lifting the front when it wants to. It's stable running. I mean, what can you say? But what I'd like to just add was, I bought that bike on the strength that there was some problems with it, and the owners had they'd kind of had their fill of it. Really, they couldn't figure out the problem, and what was happening, I think, is, although some people are willing to do a bit of basic maintenance just to keep their bikes running nice, they'll often farm out some issue, like the jobs that they need doing, to other people who are in the know of what needs to be done, like especially jetting and carburation and things like that tends to scare people. But so what they do is they entrust these tasks to people who are supposed to be very good at it. Now, I'm not suggesting that the owners were in the wrong. I believe everything that they said, but to them, they'd got a bike that wouldn't work, so they give it to somebody to make it work, and it doesn't work. And you can never tell. You can never tell what's been happening. Whether, say, the owner has messed around with it and they've gotten lost with it, because it's very easy to get lost if you're not quite sure what's happening. And also these tuning companies, you don't know what they're doing inside your motors, inside your carburetors. They've drilled that jet out. So if somebody doesn't know much about it, but then they take it upon themselves to try and rectify an issue, they take that jet out, they read it's a 38, so they think, oh well, it's rich, so I'll go and get a 35, or it's lean, so I'll go and get a 40 or a 42 or something like that, based on the numbers that are written on the jets, and they're not right. They're just wrong. So you can't always trust what's happening there. You know, sometimes it's worth sort of getting in and figuring it out for yourself. I used to work in a bike shop, and a lot of the times a customer would bring a bike in, you know, and you find all manner of things, and you're like, well, no wonder it's not working. Like, there's a fix on top of a fix on top of a fix, where actually if you get to the root of the problem and just get things correct as they should have been done in the first place, more often than not that's actually the problem. You know, again, you don't know what people have been doing, what's been done to the bike before. You would think a so-called tuning company would you know, that's running dynos and stuff like that would have jets. And why would you drill the jet out if you haven't got a stockpile of jets that you can call upon, to the point that you have to drill out an existing jet? I mean, there's no going back from that. Once you drill that jet out, it's gone, and we don't even know what size that are. I'll tell you what, the hole in that jet, it looks like the kind of hole that you'd find in a main jet. You know, it's a big hole in there. Like I say, it's a so-called tuning company that doesn't have all the gear to try different jets. I don't like slamming people, but in my eyes, a bloody place couldn't tune a blooming banjo. I hope this video helps a few people out, you know, who may be having similar issues, or just, you know, just get a bit of an understanding of what's going on, you know. So if the video is useful for you, then great. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.